There's a strange paradox at the heart of a game like Baldur's Gate 3. You know the story's pre-written, and yet every choice feels like it fundamentally alters the world around you. This creates an intoxicating feeling of agency, a feeling that most novels struggle to replicate. Now, I've seen this problem countless times, and I've been guilty of it myself. We fixate on the perfect plot we've planned, losing sight of the difficult choices that make a character feel truly alive. But this is also where Baldur's Gate 3 offers us a different way of thinking. The game provides a powerful blueprint for creating a profound illusion of choice within a linear story. It proves that a fixed narrative can still feel deeply personal and endlessly replayable. So in this video, I'm going to show you 3 core techniques the game uses to achieve this effect. Tools that you can immediately apply to make your own novel unforgettable. And it all begins with shifting your perspective on what a character's choice is truly for. Let me ask you this. Have you ever read a story that felt like it was on rails? A story that feels less like an emotional journey and more like a game of connect the dots? I've certainly read and written my fair share drafts that suffered from this exact problem. Many years ago, I actually used to think that as long as the plot moved forward, the reader would be happy. Boy, was I wrong. You see, the problem is that the choices characters make in such stories lack resonance. They just happen and then everything moves on, leaving no ripples in its wake, which is precisely the trap Baldur's Gate 3 so masterfully avoids. Let me give you a perfect example. Early in the game, you find an owlbear cub in a cave with its mother. Now, things can go sideways here and the mother dies, leaving the cub an orphan. Later, you stumble upon that same cub in a goblin camp where it's being terrified for sport. At that moment, you're given a choice. You can leave it to its fate or you can intervene. Now, let me be crystal clear. The fate of the world does not depend on one small fuzzy creature. While it can be of some assistance much later, this choice has almost zero impact on the main plot. But if you do save it, days or weeks later, that little owlbear cub shows up at your camp. It becomes a permanent resident, a weird little friend who you can talk to and who occasionally brings you a dead squirrel as a gift. And that moment, that small act of compassion paying off, somehow feels more important than slaying a dozen demons. Why? Because it was your choice. The game remembered. The game validated your decision. It's not just the owlbear either. This design philosophy is everywhere. Help a struggling tiefling bard named Alfira finish a song in the first act? Well, in the second act, you'll find her again thriving, and her new song is about the very heroes who showed her kindness. The game constantly finds ways to tell you, I see what you did, and it mattered. This experience reveals the true genius of Lariance's design. What appears to be an engine for infinite choice is, in fact, a masterfully crafted validation engine. The game's primary obsession is reflecting your decisions back at you, big and small, through character reactions, environmental changes, and long-term consequences. This is a secret to that powerful illusion of agency. The feeling doesn't come from having endless possible endings. Even Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't have that. The power comes from the story itself acting as a constant echo of your character's soul. Instead of just moving to the next pre-drawn point, your choices create the picture itself. So to break free from this connect the dots mindset in your own writing, the first step you must learn is to design choices that have real emotional weight. Choices that your narrative can then validate. That's the entire philosophy behind the emotional waypoint system I teach, and I've put together a free starter kit that you can grab using the link in the description below. Now, with that said, as novelists, our path overall is obviously set. Our stories are linear after all. As much as we'd like to, we simply cannot offer our readers a dialogue wheel or 20 different endings, but we can absolutely build our own validation engine. The goal for us as writers is to shift our focus from dictating the plot to architecting the process and the consequences of real character choices. Readers might not be able to change the final outcome, but they will feel every ounce of pressure that leads to it. They understand the paths not taken, and because of that, the path that is taken will feel earned, inevitable, and deeply personal. So with all that said, how do we actually translate this feeling of player agency into a linear narrative? Well, it comes down to 3 specific design principles Larian Studios mastered, which we can adapt into powerful frameworks for our novels. The first and perhaps most important is the concept of consequence ripples. The application is like this. You've likely heard of Chekhov's gun already. The idea that if you show a rifle on the wall in Act 1, it must go off by Act 3. Consequence ripples elevate that classic advice even further. This moves beyond simple foreshadowing into what narrative theorists call causal chains. What at first appears to be simple foreshadowing is in fact a system of cause and effect centered on your character's agency. It's about making your character's choices the guns that go off later. This basically means that every choice becomes the first link in a chain, creating a plot that is a direct and undeniable reflection of your protagonist's decisions. Take the Tieflings refugees on Baldur's Gate 3 again. Early in the game, you make a huge choice: save them from the goblin horde or let them be slaughtered. If you save them, it's not just a one and done quest. That single choice creates dozens of ripples. You meet those same refugees again on the road, then in a city, and then in the final battle itself. One of them, a blacksmith named Damon, is critical to a companion's personal quest. If he dies in that first act, her entire storyline is permanently altered and diminished. The game makes your early compassions and overall choices matter again and again, and this is the magic of consequence ripples. It's a practice of linking a character's early minor choices to significant later payoffs or problems. And here's a practical guide for your own novel. Go back to your first act. Identify 3 small choices your protagonist makes. These shouldn't be life or death decisions. They could be a choice to show kindness to an outcast, a choice to take a shortcut through a dangerous wood, or a choice to tell a white lie to protect someone. Now, map a direct consequence for each of these choices that only pays off in your third act. The kindness shown to the outcast results in them providing a safe house during the final battle. The shortcut reveals a hidden cave that becomes the perfect place to later ambush the antagonist. And the white lie unravels at the worst possible moment, sowing distrust right before the climax. This transforms your plot from a sequence of events into a chain of consequences. Consequences that can be good or bad, but every one of them originating from your character's agency at all times. Framework 2 then is the yes and dialogue tree. As writers, we spend a lot of time thinking about a character's internal world, but often that internal debate stays locked in the head. The reader only sees the final decision, not the struggle that led to it. This is one of the biggest missed opportunities I see in early drafts. We skip the most potent source of drama, the character's internal conflict. Baldur's Gate 3 on the other hand gives us a model for externalizing that struggle. In the game, you see the different paths a conversion can take and pick whatever appeals to you the most. As a result, you feel seen because the game anticipates and provides an outlet for your desired approach. You can be heroic, sarcastic, pragmatic, or even cruel. While different, we can still create this same feeling in a novel. The technique for that is to externalize your protagonist's internal debate, creating a mental dialogue tree for the reader. When your character faces a difficult conversation or a critical decision, you don't just present their final choice. You walk the reader through the other options the character considered and rejected. Show them wrestling with the sarcastic retort before choosing a diplomatic response. Let them feel the pull of a selfish desire before they commit to a selfless act. For example, when confronted by a desperate villain, your hero might think, "My first instinct was to laugh, to tell him he was getting exactly what he deserved. Another part of me, the colder part, saw an opportunity to use this desperation. But then I looked at his face and I saw my own fear reflected back at me." Now, obviously, you don't put it on the page exactly like that, word for word. You weave it in, make it more subtle, make some of these thoughts fragments and others maybe even spoken out aloud while the person is alone. But overall, by showing the rejected past, you validate the reader's own thoughts. The reader who is thinking, "Just finish him," feels acknowledged. The reader who is hoping for a peaceful solution feels heard as well. And when the character finally acts, the choice feels more profound because the reader has explored the alternatives alongside them. This technique does something crucial as well. It builds profound reader empathy by dramatizing the process of a choice, not just its outcome. Which leads us to framework 3, failing forward. You see, as writers, we have a natural instinct to protect our heroes. Often we're afraid that if they fail a critical task, the story just stops. I used to suffer from this constantly. I'd write my hero into a corner and then invent some Deus Ex Machina to save them because I thought failure meant the story was over. After all, if the hero fails to get the antidote, the king dies and the story is done, isn't it? Well, this fear creates predictable narratives where the protagonist always succeeds when it matters most. While Baldur's Gate 3, on the other hand, operates on a more powerful design philosophy that could be summarized as failure is rarely a dead end, it's a detour that often leads to a more interesting story. This is the essence of what plot theorists call the try-fail cycle. True narrative momentum is not built on constant success. It's built on a character's response to failure. So what appears to be a setback is actually a catalyst for a new opportunity. For example, in Baldur's Gate 3, there's a timed underwater mission where you have to save a group of gnomes from a submersible. It is incredibly easy to fail. But if you do, the story doesn't end. Instead, the gnome's allies become enraged at your failure, and you must now find a completely different and often more violent path to achieving your larger goal of destroying an enemy factory. Failure did not stop the plot, it simply changed the conditions of victory. And more importantly, it raised the stakes and forced the character to adapt. So failure, when used correctly, is the single most powerful engine for character development. And here is how to apply this to your own plotting. For every major goal your protagonist has, ask yourself, what happens if they fail? Then design a new path forward that is a direct result of that failure. The goal is to make failure an engine for plot, not a stop sign. Let's say your hero needs to steal a map from the Baron's study. The success path is that she gets in and out cleanly. With your plot requiring her to get that map, that's what you write after all. Maybe you add some spies and have her trespassing discovered while still letting her flee successfully at the last moment, of course. Now, the failing forward path is completely different here, because in that one, she gets caught. This forces her into a confrontation with the Baron's estranged daughter, who hates her father and agrees to help your protagonist in exchange for passage out of the city. The failure did not end the quest. She still got the map, yet simultaneously the fail forward path also deepened the relationship and raised the stakes. By designing your plot this way, you make the story far less predictable, and you make it more exciting. So by integrating these three techniques, consequence ripples, the yes and dialogue structure, and the principle of failing forward, you shift the reader's experience from passive observation to active emotional participation. They feel the weight of each choice because you've designed your story around its consequences, which completely changes the relationship with the characters and your world. What Baldur's Gate 3 teaches us is a fundamental shift in our role as authors. It encourages us to move from being mere plotters, dictating a rigid sequence of events, to becoming choice architects. Our job is to design a narrative framework where a character's choices are the load-bearing walls of the entire structure. This is what makes a story feel dynamic, personal, and endlessly fascinating, creating that intoxicating illusion of agency that readers crave. But designing these powerful consequential choices can feel paralyzing on its own. How do you know which choices truly matter for a character's arc? How do you build an entire novel around a handful of key decisions without the story losing momentum or falling apart in the middle? Well, for that, watch this video here next, where I break down exactly what these 5 waypoints are and how you can use them to map out your entire novel.